little over 30 years ago, the Suffolk County Planning Department wrote that Sag Harbor is as much a part of the national scene as the French Quarter in New Orleans or Greenwich Village in New York City. And it's been that way for centuries. But for how long? The threats have been getting so serious that a group called Save Sag Harbor has been formed. Mia Grosjean is its president. Save Sag Harbor from what?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. Basically, what we want to do is to keep Save Sag Harbor's Main Street alive. And one of the problems right now is in the summertime we have thousands of people that come through our village, but in the wintertime our shops are sometimes empty. And one of the reasons that we've brought the National Trust here is to talk about their Main Street program. And their Main Street program works with downtown stores to talk to them about who their customers are, how they can get more customers throughout the year. Because one of the problems is that our stores are extremely expensive right now to rent, and the only people that can rent them are the people that actually can make money on them. And what we're trying to do is to see whether the Main Street program could help them be more viable throughout the year. So to answer your question, it's to save them from the big box stores that we're afraid are basically going to be the only ones to be able to afford the space, which we don't want. We want to keep it a viable market town in the old sense of the word.
Save Sag Harbor began after, rumors at the least of CVS coming in and is that all happening with CVS?
Yes. Well, one of the things is that actually pre-CVS, the village board decided to put a moratorium on site plan development, and it put a moratorium on it to say, okay, we really do need to look at our codes now, and our village building codes are codes. And so consequently, CVS was stopped at that point. Now, whether they, after the moratorium ends, which will be, we're not sure either, it could be in June or it could be extended for another 3 months, we don't know, because that's the village board that does that. Then we'll see what happens with CVS. I have no idea what's happening with CVS.
Stephen, what makes Sag Harbor special?
Oh, so many things, Carl. I think it's diversity and its age and how well both of those things have been preserved so far, at least. As you know, having been around here almost as long as I have, Carl, the longer, actually, I'll give you that. We have a whaling village on our hands that survived largely through neglect in its long years as a factory town, and it's being reinvented all over again. The one thing it's got in common is it's always been a boom town, and it still is. You know, it's dealing with uncontrolled change today, and that's what a lot of people are tearing their hair out over, but it's part of what makes Sag Harbor itself.
Trace the history of Sag Harbor, a whaling town going way, way back.
Well, we celebrated our 300th birthday last year, as you know, and that's a little bit of a stretch. 1707 is simply the first reference to Sag Harbor by name, so we had a place here at that time. It was a port for Sagaponic and other surrounding agricultural communities, and whaling, of course, was getting going. They needed a place to ship the whale oil from. That was being gathered on the ocean shore. Gradually, though, the whales got smart, they got a little scarcer, and they started having to launch bigger boats. They needed a deeper harbor. So Sag Harbor really thrived just before the Revolution. They were shipping boats out to the West Indies and to Greenland to whale in the 1760s. Pretty amazing reach. After the wars, the War of 1812, of course, as well, whaling really took off in earnest. You have Sag Harbor boats going as far as Japan, Antarctica, the Arctic. You know, a little village with its arms around to the world is the way I think of it in the early 19th century. That industry goes belly up in the late 1840s, very suddenly, and Sag Harbor has hard times until the watch case factory gets going in 1881. Runs for a century, really.
So, because of this decline in whaling and the village going into, well, a sort of a depression, there was no way to have this place raised and rebuilt. It should have became a time capsule. Am I wrong?
No, you're exactly right, and that's a great phrase. Preserved in amber by neglect in a way, or simply adaptive reuse, which is what the historic preservationists like to say these days. A lot of the grander buildings found other jobs to do. Mansions became boarding houses, things like that. There was a lot of new building in the factory years. The village was expanded. A lot of the frame houses that we call watch case houses went up in that time. And then you don't get a lot of construction or renovation in the years from the Depression through when we first knew Sag Harbor in the 60s. And what we're seeing now today is that absent a factory, absent a local industry other than real estate and the attendant industries of home renovation and rental and all of that we know very well out here, these buildings that got built by whaling and watchmaking and preserved by neglect are being rebuilt, and for a very different clientele, and that's really the way in which the built environment tells the story of this place. I think the fact that it does tell the story, that you can see every decade of Sag Harbor's history on its streets today, is part of what makes it fabulous, because it is a time capsule, and it's a walk through the whole time.
Talk about the architecture. I mean, it's rather unique.
It is, and we've got a bit of everything. Really the oldest buildings that we can date are to the 1790s. We may have some older, we're never really going to know. We don't have much documentation. But we've got plenty of very strong colonial architecture of that late 18th century period. And buildings are very different then. You have shops in the lower story of Holmes on Upper Main Street, where it meets Madison. You've got grand and very modest houses from the whaling era. You've got mansions that captains lived in. You've got houses that tradespeople lived in. You've got them on many of the same blocks. You've got the little watch case houses. And, of course, you've got the watch case factory. We've got a very rare thing in this 1881 brick structure that, of course, we're all worried about what happens next to. Being with us at all. Losing it would be a big lost piece of our story. And part of the fact that we have a landmark community, which means that every change to the built environment is something that's up for public discussion, often very heated public discussion, means that we don't get a lot of new building these days. Sometimes that's actually a loss, but it also means that a lot of buildings have gotten rehabbed, sometimes over-restored, sometimes expanded beyond recognition. You know, it's the full gamut. But what we get to build today is rebuilding. So that's a big part of the architectural story, too.
What do you think it'll take to save Sag Harbor? I mean, it's been unique, but there have been other places in the United States that were unique, and suddenly they ended up sort of as cookie-cutter communities, part of the homogenized picture of land use that's kind of appeared the last several decades in this country.
Yeah, well, there's so many issues here, Carl, as you know, and, Save Sag Harbor is a great bumper sticker and a great buzz phrase, because who wouldn't want it? I mean, that just sounds like what we're all after, but when you parse that, you find that different people mean different things when they say that, and so I ask two questions, save it from what and save it for whom? So I think the real answer to your question, what's it going to take, is sustainable solutions for the community as a whole, not just the built environment, but the human community. And that's a hard thing to really put a finger on. So if right now Sag Harbor retains its flavor, its feeling, its diversity, because a lot of people who couldn't move here today still find good ways to be here now, that's got to be held on to. That's got to be the truth in 20 years as well as 10. That's all about economics. If we had to build this community from scratch today, thank God we don't, with all new residents, we would have a totally different place. So it involves subsidies of various kinds and understanding what we value. So that's vague, but as broad as I can be.
You've come out to Sag Harbor. You've lived in Sag Harbor all your life. You wrote this wonderful book, Keeping Time in Sag Harbor, which in photographs documents the beauty of Sag Harbor. Your mother, Joyce Egginton, a longtime journalist, done wonderful interviews with people in Sag Harbor. How do you this is not a laboratory experiment to you. How do you feel about this very challenging time for Sag Harbor?
Well, I'm excited that a lot of people are concerned and talking about the tough issues, but I'm concerned too. And of course, this book, from a personal standpoint, was done out of a lot of emotion, loss being one big part of it. Like a lot of people here, I feel that things that were precious are becoming less and less possible. The community is becoming something else. But, the surprise of researching Sag Harbor's past was to realize that the problems it's facing today are very consistent with the very factors that built it. It has always been a boom town. It's a maverick community. When you try to regulate it, when you try to wrap your arms around these problems and resolve them through government measures, there's always a bristling, there's always a problem. I mean, Sag Harbor would never have been built if we tried to do it under the conditions we're working with today. In other words, a historic district and the kinds of subsidies that might keep lower income residents here in what is, after all, a luxury market. So I have a lot of mixed emotions, but also a lot of gratitude for the number of people who have recently joined this conversation. The fact that a term like Save Sag Harbor can have such universal appeal means that we're doing something right, means that the community has articulated its values in a meaningful way that people can grab hold of, even if everyone means something different by them. Of course, it's critical to remember Sag Harbor is not just a built environment, it's a human community. It's all of the people we saw coming out for a funeral for the first child lost from this community since World War II the other day. I think you see a wonderful display of emotion and a tragic reminder of how much everyone cares for each other, for this place, for its future, for its past.
Carol Williams, you've lived in Sag Harbor for a very long time and
Yes.
value the village.
Yes, very much so. I came here 33 years ago, and I've had 3 children grow up here. And I'm not sure that any of them can afford to live here now. I mean, they might.
What do you feel about the changes that seem to be threatening Sag Harbor now?
Well, I wish there are some good changes. There are people living here year-round doing creative, interesting things. But I think the most serious changes are the speculation in real estate, where people are buying houses not to live here but to make money from them. And so that I think that's also true of commercial properties. And that really is very destructive to the life of a community. because the people who simply work for their livings can no longer afford to live here.
You're the author of a book on gardening,
Yes.
and you have a lovely garden. You've had lovely gardens, and your life has been devoted to some sort of natural order, I'd say.
Yes.
And Sag Harbor is kind of, I don't know, a municipal reflection of beauty.
That's true.
Can it last?
It could last, but only, I think, if we really take very serious action. I think we need more than anything a comprehensive plan. There are real limits to growth anywhere. I think there's only so much sewage that can be put into this bay. There's only so much traffic that can run through this town that we have to, I think it's gotten beyond, our local boards have been wonderful, but I think we really need professional help in helping us to establish what the real limits to growth in this community are. I don't mean economic growth. I think we could do wonderful things, with our imaginations and creatively. But I think that just to use the place as, to sell it off for more and more money and create more and more without any sense of what the natural limits are is very destructive. So I really hope so much that our village will take hold and really take a long look at the future before making any more decisions about growth.
Catherine Thornton,
Yes.
you live in Sag Harbor. You lived in
Yes.
Sag Harbor for many years.
Yes.
What makes Sag Harbor special for you, and why are you seeking to kind of keep it that way?
Well, quite frankly, I came to the area one night on a lark. I was actually visiting New York, and we just stopped by in Sag Harbor to see somebody very quickly, and I fell in love with it. And if you've visited Sag Harbor even just once, there's it's obvious. The people, they're very unique. I love all of the Hamptons, but Sag Harbor is my special Hampton. I love the way it's very diverse, very welcoming, the artistic community. And just think you walk at the end of Main Street and there you are on a wharf and you can just see the beautiful bay. I love that. I love seeing the boats in the summer. But it's just a very special place. It has that very New England-y feel. And I'm originally from Niagara Falls, New York, and I came here in the dead of winter. But to me, I could see the potential. I love the fact that we don't have the really harsh winters here, even though we do have change of season. It's not as harsh as what I had become accustomed to. So, as I said, I came for a visit and decided to spend the rest of my life here.
And how do you feel about the threatened changes to Sag Harbor?
Oh, my. Well, I guess like in any community. As I said, I'm from Niagara Falls, and so I witnessed the death of a community. Niagara Falls was a place where people flocked to Honeymoon City from all over the world. And when I left in the 80s, it was in a very bad state. And I think the area there thought that the casino gambling was going to be an answer. And I visited a few times since I've lived here, only a few times. And I must say, I miss the old Niagara Falls. It's nothing like it was. And you talk to a lot of people from that area, and they feel very strongly the same way. The old Niagara Falls that we knew and loved is gone. It's gone. It's only in our memories. And I suppose anybody who's been here in Sag Harbor for any length of time, you fall in love with the beauty of the historic beauty and the old field. And it is hard to think that, well, I guess the discussion today was about big boxes coming in and the national franchises, and it just doesn't seem like Sag Harbor. It doesn't seem like the place that I fell in love with anyhow. So I'd hate to see it change, personally.
Bill Chaliff, you're an architect, and your stress has been solar architecture, sort of modern architecture, but you're a great fan of Sag Harbor, which is certainly not modern. You think that Sag Harbor can hold on, can last, considering the pressures on it?
Yes, Carl, I really think they can. I think it depends on the will of the people who live here more than anything else. The the community has to agree. It's very hard because it's an extremely diverse community, which is one of the great qualities and unique assets that they have. Take this diversity and agree to find an agenda, you know, a mission, you know, find common goals that would include this, quote, saving of the existing or fabric or however we want to phrase it. And if they can unite behind that, then they will achieve it.
I wonder just if it would just take uniting behind. I mean, you look at most towns in the United States now. If you look at most towns on Long Island, they're sort of cookie cutter places, you know, and they have McDonald's. Not that McDonald's is coming to Sag Harbor, but there's talk of all kinds of chain operations coming to Sag Harbor, and well, that would change Sag Harbor very, very fundamentally, wouldn't it?
Well, it changes any community, and not for the best. You know, I'm certainly against the idea of chains, big box stores, and so forth. They take resources, they take money out of the community, and they bring nothing in. The commodities that they sell are the same commodities that go across the whole nation. They don't respect the idea of regionalism. They don't respect any kind of local culture. They don't respect any kind of local history. They never really do any good for the community, except offering cheaper goods, cheaper commodities. And that way they compete with the internet more than anything else. Again, if the community can unite behind a clear image of what they want this village to be like, I believe, again, they can be successful in maintaining that. But it's hard to agree who's going to come in, who's going to go out. There are interests that the commercial interests here are very powerful. The people who live here, the range in income, all the way down from those who are just barely getting by to those who are doing, you know, obscenely well. And again, it's hard to bring those diverse interests together to focus on a set of certain criteria about what their village will be like. I think that's the real challenge. And this kind of event is important in that the information that is brought to the community puts these issues on the table and encourages people to discuss them with intelligence so that they can make these decisions.
As an architect, what do you think makes Sag Harbor special architecturally?
The curve. Number one, it's the curve, Carl, and that street where it draws you along. You can't take the whole Main Street in all in one eye shot, and it magically enfolds as you move down. So it's a very clever and wonderful way to take something that's essentially static and dynamic, these buildings that are just sitting there, but turn it into a dynamic experience. You know, I said static, not dynamic, but it really plays with that issue, and that's number one. Of course, the buildings are great, but ultimately it's the scale of all these things. The detail respects the concept of the whole, the trees, the street furniture, all of those things work together.
Big structures are coming into Sag Harbor soon. Some substantial housing, I shouldn't say developments, but housing structures. That's going to kind of, I don't know, change the scale, no?
Well, perhaps. I think a really fine design team who understands the nature of the Main Street and also the ancillary streets that work with the Main Street can bring a large square footage into the village successfully without really hurting what you have here. I believe that to be true. I think you could double the square footage of the village without hurting it in any way. I think there are places where, you know, what we accept just because it's always been that way is amazing. Particularly the car parks. You know, the car parks are not beautiful places, and we give and they occupy prime real estate. And I think there are other ways to handle the automobile that should be investigated so that we could use those parcels for the affordable housing that's truly needed, and of course additional retail and office space.
Susan Mead, you're an officer of Sag Harbor. What are you trying to save?
We're trying to preserve the historic character and charm of the Main Street Village. The local retailers, the mix that we've had that everybody loves. Main Street's the reason I purchased a house in Sag Harbor instead of one of the other towns out on the north end. And it's a unusual place.
Sag Harbor used to be called the Unhampton.
Yes, and it still is, actually, to someone like myself who's new to the area. I've only owned my house for about 5 years, and it's very different than the other Hamptons.
And where are you from? Your dialect suggests you're not from...
I'm from Texas.
And you drive through Texas, and I have.
Yes.
I remember driving through Texas, in fact, 40 years ago, and it was sort of like different. These days, it isn't too much different than Ohio or too much different than... I mean, in terms of the box stores and the chain, you know what I'm saying? The strip zoning. And Sag Harbor is exceptional.
It is. And Fort Worth, Texas, for example, is exceptional and unusual. And they've managed to keep some of their stockyard kind of charm, Western charm. Many of the Texas cities have not. So that's probably a better example. San Antonio is unique. And Sag Harbor is a small, unique village. And that Main Street is very unusual and special.
What do you think it'll take to save it, and can it be saved?
Well, first of all, it's not. Saving means preserving the best part and helping the merchants that we love stay in business. It means teaching people to shop locally, and all of us need to be shopping locally and not driving long distances to buy the same type of goods. And it means using our zoning laws and economic development tools to help it remain as it is and get better.
Laura Grenning, you have a store, a gallery on Main Street in Sag Harbor, and the stress, it kind of matches Sag Harbor, is classical painting, classically trained artists doing just the most wonderful, I mean, it just is a compliment to Sag Harbor. And
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being in Sag Harbor, but the question is whether Sag Harbor will remain sort of like the art in your store, unusual and sort of a classic village.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen in Sag Harbor. I think there's a lot of forces here. I think the market forces are the thing that's scaring everybody, and I think that the town is working hard to develop some codes, and they haven't been unveiled yet. And I'm hoping that the community has a lot of time to mull it over, to try to figure out how to manage this process, because we can't control market forces, but we can control the codes around town. But I'm in a bizarre position being a long-standing business owner in town, well, 12 years, 10 years. But I bought a building recently, and I bought the building not to speculate, but more because I could see what is coming, and I did it more as a defensive move, so that I would always have a place to run my shop, and there's an apartment upstairs that I could live in. But it's the amount of money that it costs for me to buy that building is going to make it very hard for my little business to survive on those cash flows.
If businesses, sort of the kind of businesses that exist in every American town these days, these chain stores and so forth, come to Sag Harbor, and the little drugstore is no longer the little family-owned drugstore and so forth, and what will it mean to you?
Well, we could live I could live in a lot of different places, but I specifically came to live on the East End 12 years ago, 13 years ago, because I felt connected. And I think, someone who's an architect told me one of the reasons we love Florence, Italy, for example, is that everything is human scaled there as opposed to other major modern cities. And I feel that this is very human scaled. The buildings complement the humans. It's not about the buildings, it's about the people here. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we find those box stores so aesthetically offensive and unappealing because they make us feel small and insignificant. And this is a town that it might take a whole day to walk up Main Street because you know so many people and you have so much to share with them. And that's what I'm doing in this town. And it's not about making the most money. It's about living a rich life.